Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to my Fallout 4 Mod Spotlight series, where today we're having a look at yet another wonderful mod, this time in the form of Pre-War Cybernetics, which is being made by user Nero. And what this glorious little piece of work looks to add into the game is, well, this interesting little suit of armor that I have on, which consists of 4 different pieces of, well, cybernetic armor. We have the 2 arms, each of which are considered individual pieces of armor. We also have the spine plate, which is on my back there, and last but certainly not least, we have the gloves. Altogether, that is 4 separate pieces of armor which you can build, and then subsequently upgrade with a whole slew of different armor modifications, firmware upgrades, and even a variety of different paint jobs. I believe over 20, I don't know the exact number though, but yes, it's quite a cool little mod. Now these different pieces of armor will fit over the vast majority of outfits in the game, but I've gone back to our good old vault suit just to show it off best. And it is essentially, from the look of it, just the same model as a power armor chassis, but that has been scaled down a bit, and of course different pieces ripped off of it. And yes, how you actually build these 4 pieces of armor is with one of these workbenches. This is the Cybernetics Workbench, which you can build from going into crafting, going into over here, the Cybernetics Lab, which can be built with 1 science skill and just a measly small amount of steel, wood, and screws. Pretty simple. And this one little Cybernetics Lab is where you will build these 4 individual pieces of armor, as well as create most of the modifications for it, but not all of your modifications. You still actually do need, if we go back over here, a armor workbench, because this allows you to do different modifications to the armor as well as apply paint schemes to it. And if you don't like the old school one, there is actually an alternative armor workbench which the mod maker is included in, which of course is just the Cybernetics Lab copy and pasted over, but still it does make for an interesting little thing. But yeah, that is how you build it. Quite easy and quite simple, and it's very easy and simple, like I just said. Just go into the Cybernetics Lab here, and the armature construction is where you'll go to actually build these 4 pieces, and you can see they're quite simple to actually create. The only one that requires skill is the cyber spine frame, which will need armor and science at level 1, so you can get this stuff pretty early on. Now, of course, we'll need a fair amount of materials here, which is why I actually like this mod, because I think of it as very well balanced, because it requires a fair amount of materials to start off. Now, the cyber arm is easy. It's only 5 steel and 5 cloth. Same with the right arm, of course. The hands are also just 5 and 5 on cloth and steel, but these don't really produce a whole lot. As you can see on the side there, a tiny amount of damage resistance. They do give you +1 strength, same with the right arm, and the hands just a 1/1 on the damage resistance there. The spine, though, requires skill and so many different materials, because this particular thing is where the most impressive and awesome of unique mods for this particular armor mod will go into, including things like stealth enhancements and cool things like that. So that's why this one's a lot more expensive, because it's the most complicated. But again, quite cool. I think of it as quite well balanced. Now, in here is where you also build the mods. Now, this makes it quite a lot different from other pieces of armor, where you just go to an armor workbench and build the armor mods straight into your armor. In this version, or this particular suit of armor, you actually have to build the mods here, and then go over to the workbench to install them, which I find actually quite intriguing. Instead of using 1 workbench for everything, you do require the 2. So you'll build the modifications here, and then install them over at an armor workbench. And as you can see here, we have arm gadgets which we can build, like magazine auto-injectors, which I believe this takes away the action point reload cost in VATS. Kinetic compensator, which will help bring down your, what's it called? Kick! The kick of the weapon, there you go. And just various different modifications. I'm not going to go over all of them individually, but as you can see, they require a variety of different skills and a lot of different materials to actually build, because each one of these drastically changes your character's abilities in the game, which is very, very freaking cool. So we could go from everything from like the magazine auto-ejector I mentioned, which requires Awareness 1 and Gut Nut 1, all the way to this Tesla Arc, which requires Science 3 and Blacksmith 3. And then we also have, after ARM gadgets, we have the Firmware Upgrades, which are interesting. They're just, again, different enhancements that'll help with things like hacking, tracking. The tracking matrix actually makes it so that all of your weapons have the recon spotting ability of the recon scope, and so that's a firmware upgrade that would be applied to basically everything you do. Again, why it requires Hacker 3, Robotics Expert 1, and well, actually not that bad on the material cost, but the skill cost is quite intriguing. And after the firmware, we have implants, and these different implants will actually go into the spine, as you can see, the Cyber Spine implant. And we have everything from a dialysis implant here, which gives you 20 hit point regen per minute, all the way down to camo, which will actually make you a lot harder to see and actually add a visual distortion when you're sneaking. Think the stealth armor from the previous Fallout games. And then after the implants category, we have spine gadgets, which currently is just this stim enhancer, which will add 10% more health to your stim packs. And again, all balanced by unique skills and higher cost in materials. And then the last is the Uniframe mods, which fit on the body and arms. And these will be things like the balanced frame will actually increase your move speed by 5%, and then others like the linear actuators will actually increase your agility skill by 1, and just different other things in here. Now, you may notice we haven't had descriptions of these mods in here, and that's because, well, you don't find them here. Remember what I said earlier, you actually install these via the Armor Workbench. So we could either go to an old school standard armor workbench like this one, and as you can see, we have our Cyberframe arm we can open up, and you have the Uniframe mods, paint firmware that you can add in, etc. And that's how you adjust these. Or, of course, if you want to use the alternative version, we do have this, works exactly the same way. And say, for instance, if we do want to install one of these, we'll go into the Cyberframe spine here, and go to, oh boy, the implant. And I've already built one of those active camo implants, and as you can see, it has the description in here. So the idea kind of being that you come in here to look at what you want to build, and you see the descriptions on here, and then you go to the actual Cybernetics lab to create those things. And then once you have them, well, there we go. We just attach the mod in like you would attach any already pre-built mod that you own. And let's just leave out of there. Excellent. And now, if I crouch, let's get to where you can better see us. There you go. We sort of disappear. We get that fun distortion effect as if we were wearing a stealth boy, but it's just our armor. But it does use up action points, which actually, it's not for me right now because I turned on God mode for, these demonstrations. So it's not eating up my action points, but it will normally when you use it. And yeah, you can go in here and make all sorts of other modifications as well. So like for the armor, a slot up here, the basic, when you build it, is the light, unarmored version, but we then have a medium version and then heavy versions that you can create, and these are the modifications that you can do to these pieces of armor here in the armor workbenches. So things like we can increase the armor to medium, and there we go, we're going to use a lot of resources now, and remember, the original arms were very cheap to build, but now that we're upgrading it massively to a medium armor and adding 10 to each of the resistances, it's using quite a few materials, and of course requiring armor Mark II. Now if we go to the right arm and actually... Ooh, no, we've run out of ballistic fiber. Okay, well, it'll be a good demonstration. I was going to make it heavy, but unfortunately that didn't work. But as you can see now, on my left arm, we have that sort of, well, as you saw in the workbench, the Kellogg style of armor on there. And on the right arm, we have just the standard basic light. And yeah, you can see that they improved. Now, when you go to the heavy, it essentially looks like scaled down power armor on your arms, which kind of makes you look like a World of Warcraft character, but you know what? It's still pretty fun. Now, besides the adjusting of your armor, we, of course, have the Uniframe mods that we can add in. Again, these are built in the Cybernetics lab, but you can see the different things that they do here. Then we have the gadgets, which we can add in, once more built from the Cybernetics lab, and again, the descriptions here. Then we have the paint schemes, which are built here, which is quite fun. So we could go between, oh boy, look at all these different paint schemes. Over 20. I don't know the actual proper count, but let's make this one the Vault Tech. And then on our right arm, let's make it painted, yes, black with yellow highlights. I think that'll be fun. There we go, and exit out. Now, as you can see, the armor was definitely very well shown. Oop, zoomed in too far. The paint scheme definitely shows up quite nicely on the right arm. The left arm, not so much. I mean, we did kind of go with a somewhat basic paint scheme, but it is a little bit different than it was before. And again, you have over 20 different paint schemes, and you can also apply those to the gloves and the spine as well. And if we go back to the workbench, then of course the final category that we have here is the firmware, again created from the Cybernetics lab. Then you can see what you require to do it all over here. Very fun. Now we also have some other interesting stuff for like the hands. Now you can't really add in all sorts of stuff into the hands, but you can paint them, and you can also change the variations. So do you want both hands, one hand on the left, or just on the right? So, you know, you have some customization that you can have in here. So we just have it on the right hand. If we move out, it actually makes us have okay, again, we need to move over to a place where we can get better camera angles. As you can see, on the left we have a normal human hand, and on the right we have our cybernetic hand. Very cool indeed. And yeah, that's how this all works. Again, it's a little bit complicated to get used to, purely because of the idea that it's a little strange that you have to go between the Cybernetics lab and your armor workbench to build and then install things. But again, I actually kind of like it because I find it a good balancing tool, because some of these things can definitely be a bit cheaty and, you know, game-breaking perhaps, but you know, I think that the balance between the difficulty of making and installing them, as well as the various skill requirements for creating them, works out well. Oh, now, actually, I didn't mention this before. We still have the sort of standard armor modifications you can also make, like pocketed, etc. But then you can also install the gadget instead. So either install a gadget or do a standard thing like pocketed. I did forget to mention that before. But yes, that is really it for this mod. It's quite fun, quite cool. I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. Some of the ideas for the future are more different styles of medium and heavy armor, more different mods for firmware, implants, frames, etc., more paint schemes, faction decals that perhaps could be added onto the armor. All would be quite cool things, and I can't wait to see how it goes. But yeah, that has been the Pre-War Cybernetics mod. If you would like to check it out for yourself, you can take a look at the link in the description as always, and I do hope you give it a try, because it is pretty entertaining. But that is going to be it for today's episode. I hope you all have enjoyed, and of course you do come back for the next. But until then, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good one!